All right, what's going on, everyone? Hope you're having a good Friday, kind of week 2 for everyone of getting into this like work from home routine. So we should have a good conversation today. We've got everyone kind of rattling in here. So everyone, as you're starting to load in here, do me a favor, just drop in, what company you're at, what your role is. We'll try to tailor this as much to, who we have. If we've got, those of you on the front line in sales or SDR, if you're a VP, whatever that might be. And then your company as well too. So people know, where you're from. If they need to get at you, they can get at you. And so today, the big change and big thing that we're going to talk about today. What's up, Christine? What's up, Ben? Ben, I love it, man. Ben's been in here now, I think, all 3 sessions. I think Lisa has as well too. So we've got some folks in the HR world. What's going on, Patrick, Rudy, Jake Jacobson? I know he's been in here as well too. What's up, Jake? Just the best name of all time, right? Jake Jacobson.
You can't beat it.
It's like a whole new play. Like, his parents are like, you know what? Jake Jacobson. I like it. I wonder, but I don't remember if I've asked him if it's actually just Jake or if it's Jacob. If it's Jacob Jacobson, that's interesting. That's interesting. Jake, maybe you can let us know. Is it official? It's just Jake. Okay, good. All right. If it was Jacob Jacobson, then I would be like, like whatever floats your boat. What's up? We got some of the folks from Atlanta Hawks joining us. Wait, no, dude, your middle name is not Jacob. No, I refuse. Jake is impossible. That is not Jacob Jacobson. No, man, they cannot love that name that much. I don't believe you, man. You're a good dude, but I don't believe it. And so today, what we're going to talk about is this is super applicable. We're going to try to make this applicable to all of you. I see he was just messing around. I knew it. We're going to try to make this applicable. Look, whether you're a sales development rep or salesperson, a lot of you are getting meetings pushed or you're getting deals to push. And so we're going to talk today. And what I want us to do here is, so in the chat, feel free, like I said, kind of drop in, any insights, or if I ask a question, you can feel free. Nicole, what's going on? Nicole from Vertana. Hope you and the team are doing well. Do me a favor, just click on, if you have a question, and go ahead and start dropping your questions in now about, hey, Jake, meetings are pushing for this, deals are pushing. Start dropping those in the Q&A. It's separate from the chat. There's just a little button, Q&A, and then I'm going to have that up over here so I can start to moderate and walk through it. So Matt is one of our partners at Skaled. Matt's been, working with companies with me for the last 5+ years. And so I thought it would be good for him to join and, kind of drop in kind of his insights. Matt's worked with, hundreds of companies over the last 5 years and, seen all kinds of different, we've never seen anything quite like this, but we've had clients that have went through difficult times or industries that have been hit. So I thought Matt could definitely come and shed some light here. Again, feel free to start jumping in, dropping in some of the questions you have, maybe some of the reasons that your deals are pushing. Feel free. If you guys have some, we'll call it like, not necessarily objections, but just like realities of, hey, an SDR, I heard this objection, right? Or an SDR, I heard this, and we'll try to kind of go through some of them. All right, we got Daniel from Dubai. We've got Nemanaj from Serbia. I'm sure I butchered that, but me, I try my best to get those names right. So that's cool. We got a lot of different folks here. We got some AEs, some SDRs. So Matt, first, let's start a little bit with the like outbound process. So obviously a lot of folks right now are kind of nervous about outbound. Hannah, what's going on? Hannah, thanks for joining again. So what are some things that you're seeing about outbound? People are pushing, et cetera. Like what are some of the things that we're hearing from our clients, or what are some things that you're seeing that's, relevant right now?
Yeah, I think outbound's been really tough last couple of weeks. I think most of the clients I've spoken to, and I've spoken to most of our own, the struggles they're facing right now is they really just don't know what to do. I think everyone's super aware of the situation. I don't think anyone's at a point where, they haven't come to terms with what's going on, but I think most clients, anyone really doing outbound that I've spoken to really just doesn't know how to evolve beyond tone, and I think that's the one thing I keep seeing when we start to look at, messaging is everyone's already started to adjust the tone, being more sensitive to the subject and just kind of trying to show that we're both human, but where I see, a lot of outbound still struggling is, how do I become more, some of the things we've been preaching for a long time, buyer centric and, being empathetic to the situation, which I think is very different than, thoughts and prayers. It's very different. Things like personalization, 2 years ago, everyone was talking about personalization in your outbound and how that was the future. And I think the reality is, everything I just said is table stakes now for the situation we're in, and it can't be a buzzword anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good call out, right? Like this idea of personalize is not something that people haven't been talking about, right? Like personalize is certainly something that I think a lot of people have been talking about for a long time, but I think to your point, Matt, what is different is now we're starting to realize what personalization actually meant the entire time, that exactly. It was about, it wasn't about you use your first name, their company name, and like a broad industry. It was about, did you actually know what that person's going through? And so, I think that's what, and again, if you had a chance and you'd missed out, I'm going to do this for all of y'all. I'm going to text Allie Ray real quick. I'm going to have her, can you drop the previous webinars? So for all of you who missed, if you're an SDR in particular and you're starting to think about messaging, I want you to listen to Wednesday's session. I also want you to go to YouTube and check out a LinkedIn Live I did this week with Morgan Ingram, where we went through kind of emails and content and talked about what empathy is. So if you're looking for like outbound messaging, I want you to go check out the webinar from Wednesday. I'm just going to text real quick, webinars in the chat, and Morgan YouTube video. If you guys just go check out my YouTube channel, just go to YouTube, type in Jake Dunlap and subscribe. Like you'll get all the updates there too. So I think, and then yesterday we talked about sequencing, how to think about, what I also feel like is going to be changing for people is like, you don't just have email and call. And if you're only using email and call as primary and you still treat LinkedIn and video and things like that, like would like to haves, I also think because video and LinkedIn are the number one places where you can express kind of emotion, or you can express like what's top of mind. So, that's my big thing is I really wish that everyone would, think about integrating all of those. And how are you seeing that, Matt? Like, from outbound or even with sales, like, and we can talk, I want to talk about some of the sales use cases. What are you seeing people are doing from like an integration standpoint?
It's interesting. I don't know, how everyone feels on this call, but I do feel like LinkedIn has started to get a lot more busy in the last 2 weeks. And I do think everyone's starting to realize, look, we're sitting at home, we're on our phones. I'm not answering, cold calls. And if I do, it's probably because I think it's one of my coworkers who's trying to call me that I never saved their phone number because they used to sit right next to me. But, I do think, everyone's starting to realize that LinkedIn is where we're all going. The thing that I've started to notice that I really, want to stress is it can't become the next cold outbound email, and that's the trend I'm starting to get worried about. Is I've seen a lot of a big uptick in my connects that turn into immediate DMs that are just as vague as the cold emails I've been getting since 2016. And I think that's just a really important thing to think about. Okay, LinkedIn is definitely going to be the next channel, where we can be effective and proactively, generate leads. But the strategy can't just copy and paste what we've been doing on, cold, high volume email, because it won't work, just the same way email stopped working in 2017. Yeah.
There you go. All right. So yeah, I was just going to say, like, yeah, and I definitely have had a lot of that too, and then I've had, it's interesting. I was just going to pull this up. I had this dude from Insperity. I mean, these dudes, the amount of emails that I get are just ridiculous. But it was like, if time permits, I was hoping to have an opportunity to talk with you to learn more about your company and your goals and objectives. We have a small, medium-sized and growing companies like Scaled, reducing expenses. We also help with compliance, literally absolutely nothing about what's happening in the world, like anything. I was just like, and this guy's, I said, really generic, man, pretty weak with everything going on. And he's like, business will continue on and you'd be surprised by how successful this is in eliciting good responses. Good luck and continued success. It's like, dude, it's not good. Like if you're not being, you're just being tone deaf. you know, and like, so if you're at Insperity right now, you know, like I would just encourage all of you to just maybe be a little more sensitive to what, you know, what people are going through right now. So, but I agree with you, man. I'm seeing the same shit just over and over again. So I'm going to go, Ben's got a question. Ben Harbert said, had a deal push because they need to triple down on their new delivery business, which causes them to fire the two teams our work was going to impact directly. Whereas our larger established delivery clients are able to fully let us handle trending customer pain points while they double down on tracking logistical operations hurdles. Curious if there's a way to combine and leverage both situations to get across that now is the time to let pain points slide, by the way, but also being sensitive to companies that no longer have headcounts to care about anything other than logistics and operations. So for me, guys, the big thing that I would focus on is I would really focus on, if you can, dividing customers into, we'll call it two different people, you know, dividing your customers into two different people that you can then go. And from there, like, there's a certain amount of people that you're going to be able to, that you're going to be able to basically like reach out to right now. There's a group of people that need it and a group of people that are not, you know, there's a group of people that need it. And that's what I'm really focused on right now. I'm just going to try to just see if we can do that. Oh, there we go. Jacob. It must be a Jacob thing. He had the same idea I did. So long story short, you know, hey, look, dude, we all got time for this shit. So my big thing, Ben, what I've been harping on is that it's okay. You're going to have two different types of customers. You can have one type of customer who can do business with you right now, double down on those, call to action, business as usual, integrate some more normal things. No problem with that. The other group of people, like, you have to then plant a seed to what's going to happen next. You know, you have to start to plant a seed that in reality, what you're going to do is you're like, look, I understand, like right now, this first one, they had to triple down on their new deliveries business, which caused them to fire their two teams our work was going to direct, right? So I think you can say, look, I understand it. Let's check back in 2 weeks. So I think a lot of people right now, you just need to be patient. You know what I mean? Be patient, like my man, Ron John. You know what I mean? I'm sorry that he, you know, got at the mom like that. Like that was kind of, he like went for the old school. So I think that that's it. One group, be patient, just wait. You know what I mean? So, and then another group of people where you can be 100% direct to. So Ben, that's my question. That's what I'd drop for you, man. That's what I would do. Matt, what do you think about something like this?
Yeah, I think it's just be human, you know, like, look, if they're going through some tough shit and they can't, you know, it doesn't make sense for us to go and sell to them right now. Just take a couple of weeks. And I would just kind of take a step back. You know, if you're selling to an industry that just got decimated, you know, this is probably the last thing on their mind, is trying to figure out how to get your opportunity over the finish line before the end of the quarter. So to Jake's point, I think it's, you know, you just kind of plant the seed and you try to help advise as much as you can. And there will be a time when that industry is about to bounce back, and, you know, just kind of be the one that was there supporting as much as you can right now, and, you know, giving advice that helps them get through it. And, you know, I think that value comes back when the timing is right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's all you can do with that group.
Yeah, I think that's right, man. So that's what I would say to you, Ben, is like, don't worry about it. Like, the key is this, guys, some of these deals are going to push. That I can't help everything, but for a lot of these, there's still an opportunity. And so with a lot of these folks, and again, guys, keep the questions coming. Like right now, I think we've got a couple, but make sure to keep, like, again, I'm sure some of you guys are having deals push. I think Hannah had one right before our man, Ron John, chimed in. And Kristen, I think, had one too. So we can start jamming on some of these. So I think what we're saying is that just be smart about this right now, everybody, that if a deal pushes, it's okay to push people a little bit. Right. And so, you know, even with you, Ben, like, it's okay to come back and try to come back with a rebuttal. Like, don't think just because now someone says, hey, look, times are tough, you know, Ben, I need to push. Don't think that then you automatically have to just, you know, say no. You can come back and say, look, hey, I totally get it. Why don't we go focus on new business? And then when they're like, no, look, man, it's not a good time, et cetera, and you don't have the value prop because you weren't focused there, then you can say, look, I get it. Do that. And if then in 2 weeks, this becomes something, let's set up the conversation. So it doesn't mean to stop selling. You know what I mean? It does not mean. So you can still push people a little bit, just, you might want to like lay off a little sooner than you would before. So, all right. So Hannah Bunting had a question. I've heard things like not a priority right now, cultural human shift, not on the technology front whatsoever. So not a priority right now. Hannah, if you want in your questions, do me a favor, just drop in maybe a little bit more detail there. Like, what are they saying is not a priority now, right? And I know, let's see, so Hannah, I know that, again, kind of like in your world in particular, there's like a lot of different like opportunities of things that could be a fit or maybe not. So I think just, let us know kind of a little bit more. And I think we can try to go deeper there, about like, again, what a little bit more about Fleetsmith, and we can come back to it. So let's go to Ryan. Raya Butler says, do you think with enterprise sales, all sales matter, can the right email at the wrong time screw you? All right, Matt, I'll let you kind of take that one.
Sure.
So can the wrong or right email the enterprise sales screw you? Like, how sensitive are people right now?
I mean, look, I do, there's definitely a real sensitivity right now. I mean, people are going through some shit. I mean, I think that's a real reality. I would be very thoughtful about what I'm sending people. I think if you're using tools like Outreach and SalesLoft, I love those tools, but my motto right now is take off as much automation as humanly possible, right? Because you probably don't want to have something that comes off overly templated right now, overly generic right now, going back to what I was just talking about, just that concept of empathy. So yeah, I mean, look, it could definitely, there's no doubt that it could hurt you, where you start getting viewed as an annoyance because, you're just chasing, right? It's one-sided. So in enterprise sales, that's going to hurt a lot more than it will in a more transactional SMB sale where, you've got 10 or 15 of these and you need to close a third of them to get there. Enterprise sales, that might be, the one opportunity you're kind of banking on to get there. So I would definitely, when it comes to outbound and emails, I'm not saying don't send them, but they just need to be thoughtful. And it's conversations that Jake and everyone he's spoken to this week have really covered.
Yeah.
Just think about who's that person, like did they have to let people go, or did their peers likely get let go? How is their company likely being impacted? Did they have to do, were there layoffs or, are they having to pivot? So I would really just try to spend a lot more time just thinking about what's this person going through and make sure the email comes off in a way where it's not just the tone, and saying, hey, I care. It's showing that you care by showing that you actually have spent the time to really talk to their peers and understand how the industry that they live in is being impacted and how that person's probably being impacted.
I think, again, so for your case, Raya, I think that the answer is no, it's totally okay to reach out to people right now in enterprise. I think the only way you're going to get screwed is, again, if you send out a tone deaf email, right? Like, and as opposed to saying like, look, I've talked to other VPs of operations. They're kind of thinking about it like this, and this is how they're talking about, kind of change and things that are happening now. But, if this and this, which I know it could be top of mind, is relevant, then let's set up time to meet. If not, let's catch up in a couple of weeks. I think you can just be smart. I think you can just be really smart about that. And so let's see. So Kristen, I think Kristen had a question in here too that I think just got lost. Kristen Halstead. I'm hearing all essential spend has been suspended, and that people are focusing on figuring out how to do life with kids and the pressures of work all at the same time. I think that that's not true. That I think a lot has been suspended, and maybe delayed. But I also think that, look, I'm going to always have the glass half. I'm going to be extremely empathetic, but I'm going to have the glass half full. I think if you go in saying, hey, Susan, look, I know, I'm sure your spend has been, maybe your spend has been suspended. I can catch up with you in the future. 100% of people are going to say, okay, thank you. But if instead, again, you're trying to get them unstuck, you're trying to have that conversation with them, then, you can always just ask, Yeah.
And I think the thing that stands out to me is, for most of us, I think most of the companies you're referencing, Jake, are B2B, and B2B, you're solving something. Like, people aren't spending money with you because your product or your service is interesting or cool. Like, you solve something for their business, and it may not be priority number one anymore. You know, it might've been priority 1 4 weeks ago, but it's likely still a priority somewhere. And I think a lot of it sometimes is just, you know, potentially just positioning. You know, potentially it's just a matter of how we've positioned what we've pitched 4 and 8 weeks ago might not be the right way to pitch it today. Not to say the product's going to change or the service necessarily is going to change, but, you know, the way that you're pitching it and positioning it probably needs to change. And so it might be a matter of sometimes just going back to discovery, you know, as tough as that might be late into the, you know, into the process. But, you know, I think a lot of it is just really being open-minded about, you know, we might just need to come in and reposition how we're going to support in a way that feels relevant to, you know, something essential in their business. And I know that's easier said than done for some of us that, you know, might feel like our product or our service is not necessarily easily aligned to mission critical, but, you know, a lot of it is positioning too.
Yeah. I think that's it. Is just go in that there's a, you know, again, it goes back to that 1 and 2 that I was getting into. There is a subset. If you really think about it, you know, I was actually looking up Kristen's company. It's hold on. I'll just pull it up. So then I think this could be a helpful exercise for a lot of you. So I'm just pulling it up. So her company is GovZilla, right? And so what they do is forefront of leveraging the power of big data. Top pharma, these companies rely on GovZilla to mine and process government inspection, enforcement, registration data in order to quantify risk and signals. I don't know. I mean, this feels like super topical to me, right? Like, I'd have to imagine, like, with like various regulations and things that are happening, you know, if I was thinking about this, you know, how I would probably be positioned, especially things around government inspection and top pharma and manufacturers. Right now, the government is fast tracking things. Right? The government is trying to make it easier to do business. So my thing would be, you know, Chris, if you can tie what you're doing to something that's more mission critical, and you can, you know, be more top of mind to them about, like, look, right now, our federal government is moving faster than they ever have in the last ever. The federal government is moving faster than they have ever moved in the history of the federal government. That means that you top pharma, if you're in pharmaceuticals, you need to know what's happening. If you're in food or medical device, like, I'm telling you, they're trying to open up business. Let's take a meeting. You know, Kristen, I think they'll take a meeting. But I think, again, it goes back to you. Do you understand how to tie in what's happening in the world today to things that are relevant? And so, yeah, that's my, like, hot take on that. Oh, shit. All right. We got a lot of questions coming in now. Good. Okay. So I hope that helps everyone, right? So again, your deals may be getting stuck. A big chunk of your deals may be getting stuck because you're still talking about the features and your product, and you're not saying how it's relevant to today. Like what I just did there with GovZilla, you know, look, I could sell the shit out of this right now. I had a guy on what was that thing? Was that today? No, yeah, it was today, man. It was today's weekly recap. He sells furniture to offices, but all his furniture is like call booth type stuff. And I'm like, dude, you know who needs you right now? Every single executive working at home.
Seriously.
And I'm like, he's like, nobody's taking the meeting. I'm like, dude, I promise you, every single tech executive, if that guy called me up right now and is like, Jake, look, you have 2 or 3 people. Are they taking calls in their bedroom? Do they have a terrible background behind them? Like, dude, for $500, I can fix that for you and give them a better experience and be more comfortable too. Executives are taking that call, man. And so I think go ahead.
You're doing though, right? Like what I think you're doing is like, that is selling the same product to likely the same person, but positioning it in a completely different way, like a completely different way. That's not going to be in your sales playbook right now. Like that script does not exist, you know? So like it's just completely realizing that the situation has changed and you've got to be open-minded to flipping the script completely.
Yeah. And that's it. So Kristen, I would just go back to those people that have pushed and said, hey, did you guys see these 17 things that the government, like that they did in the stimulus? Do you know what all those companies that you sell to, they are pouring over that stimulus relief plan, pouring over it. And if you do analytics and insights for these industries related to government, like I would just totally be focusing on that 24/7. And so let's go ahead and let's see, we got one over here. Hannah jumped in. Hannah, Fleetsmith is an Apple device management platform. We sell into IT security. Luckily, our product works well in the remote type situations. The challenge is communicating this in a way that is empathetic, not trying to profit off of the pandemic. So Hannah, it's the same value prop. It is okay to sell right now. I think maybe you need to hear this, but Hannah, device security right now is an issue, especially for inside sales teams and for teams that aren't used to working remote. Hannah, there is absolutely no problem with you reaching out to every single VP of sales, every single software engineering leader, et cetera, and saying, look, if you're worried at all about your Apple devices, right, and IT and security, a lot of security companies were given very similar advice to, like in this remote, and like here are the top two things that usually become issues remote. One, their networks are unprotected. Two, this thing happens. Three, this thing happens. Four, whatever that is. And you reach out to that sales leader, that IT leader. Hannah, I think it's totally fine to do that. You know, I think it's just, you're totally fine to ask that question and to go into it.
I think the other thing too is, you know, you're saying you sell it into IT and security. The other thing that I think, you know, we talk about multi-threading all the time. This is the perfect opportunity to multi-thread and realize like IT and security might not necessarily be the only group that has the paranoia right now about all of their employees now doing probably multiples more of their work on their mobile devices. It's probably other people within the organization, whether it's people that they directly report into. And I think it's just a perfect opportunity to realize I'm just going to go like, who are the other people who are probably feeling.
Try reaching out to the business unit. Yeah. I mean, but I think IT is thinking about this too. I'm telling you, IT was not ready for this. IT was not ready for 150 people or 1,000 people working remote and working off of 1,000 different Wi-Fi endpoints with 1,000 different types of security. Like, I think Hannah, you're in actually a space where you could actually do quite well. I was talking to a good friend of mine who runs a sales org in New York, and they work in the IT security space. And he's like, SDRs are still hitting numbers. Like, we're hitting our numbers. And it's a very similar pitch right now. And I think, you know, again, the good part is like Apple devices. You just focus on that because that's what you all do. You know, Adam Waits, I just want to call out Adam's comment, which is like, it's interesting how we're focusing on moving away from automated message to be relevant. This should be our focus regardless. Yeah, you're right, brother. Like that's why so many people are panicking right now, is because they didn't do that. They didn't have to rely on it. They didn't have to pay attention to what their buyers cared about or be empathetic and really know and sit in their buyer's shoes. And now this is forcing them to sit in their buyer's shoes like never before. So Adam, I agree with you 100%, man. So let's go over here and some Q&A. We've got 16 questions now popping in. All right, I'm going to talk at the end about LinkedIn for outbound. This person here, we've got a couple of plus fours on this, so maybe we'll tackle it. So in using LinkedIn for outbound, let me tell you, I'll just give you kind of top tips. And then what I want you to do, scroll through the chat. Ali Ray just dropped in the webinar from yesterday. And the one yesterday we talked about in depth, but just for all of you on this one, if you didn't attend yesterday, my best advice for you on using LinkedIn is, one, connect with a ton of people right now, right? Acceptance rates are really high right now. Connect with a ton of people, a lot of your buyers. Use this time to build your network. Two, start posting twice a day, right? Or, I'm sorry, twice a week. I mean, twice a day, sure. I'd love it if you get there, twice a week. And just think about, be insightful, right? Just, hey, this thing's happening. What are your thoughts? This thing's happening. Hey, market. Hey, I work with other VPs of operations. VPs of operations, how are you thinking about this now? So you can repurpose some of your content that your marketing team is putting out, but it has to be original thought. Don't reshare posts. Don't share links, right? Have some original thought. If you do want to reshare a post, just drop the original post in the comments so people but give your own insights. So that's really the number one way. And then make sure in Sales Navigator, you set up a list of people, and then it'll show you a list of people that have posted in the last 30 days. Go comment and like their posts. So build your lead list, connect with all those people, like and comment on their posts, 2 posts a week. That's it. Anonymous attendee. It's very mysterious. You're definitely not Ron, John.
Yeah, I was looking at some LinkedIn posts people were sharing with me earlier this week. Get our take, and I think, you know, especially like the DMs, you know, there's still this sentiment of just kind of showing that you care. I think the message was something to the effect of, "Hey Jim, hope you're great and staying healthy. You know, want to just show that that I'm here for you, and, let me know if you have any questions. And there was like a thoughts and prayers at the end. And like, this person has no idea what you do and how you can help them. And like, you literally just put the work on them to basically have to go and figure out like, who are you? What do you do? How can you potentially help them? And then once they've spent all that time trying to figure that out, now they got to, respond to you and, with the ask. So I think, I would just think about it as like, that's your job, is to kind of have the, Jake talked about being prescriptive and, adding value and giving advice, and, that's your job, is to like be specific enough where people know exactly how you can help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So let's go. We got Nick Jenner over here. Nick says his deals are pushing. He sells into city governments and airports. And it looks like it's a smart waste and recycling platform that combines hardware and software. So, and it's basically long-term, big opportunities, short-term. And, basically his questions around kind of voicing concern as well, too, about what's going to happen in Q2, et cetera. So look, man, you got to kind of think about repositioning it in maybe some other way. Right. And maybe, maybe in a pitch like this, maybe a lot of it is trying to find those needles in the haystack of people, because they're going to be there, that are actually going to use this time that's a little bit down, because airports are go, to think about efficiencies in the future. And so what I would be trying to find in some of my outreach is, who are the people, because it's not 100%. Not 100% of people in the operations departments at airports are saying, we're not thinking about anything. That's not true. I promise you, there are certain airports or people or the operations or facility managers at airports that are actually saying, man, I finally get to think for once. Oh, geez, this is great. So I just would say, I would probably step up the volume and try to find that, like, hey, you may be thinking about a lot of things and your industry's hit. If you are starting to prepare for what comes next and ways that you might want to come back and do things differently, let's set up time in a couple of weeks and let's talk through it. That's my hot take for Nick, is just, there are people that are going to be still looking for this. So don't just disqualify everybody. All right, Matt, I got one for you here. Let's take that. There's one on here I liked that I saw before here. Let's just go ahead. Will Tang is from Front Funder, is a crowdfunding platform. So companies that are looking to come onto the platform to raise money. If your investor base will be hesitant, sure. We've been framing it by saying that let's still go forward, as this time to plan 3 months campaign. Quite a bit of work to be done. So when things hopefully pick back up, you're ready to rock. Yeah, I mean, Matt, what are your thoughts on that? Do you see that one from Will? It's in the chat. It's not in the question.
All right. Let me pull it up here just so I can make sure I understand the question. Sorry, I'm not seeing it. Well, I think maybe you can rephrase the question, Jake. I didn't quite understand it.
Basically what he's asking is, like, I think what they do is they bring companies onto the platform to do some type of like crowdfunding type stuff. And so these companies are kind of hesitant because they think the investor markets are kind of tight right now.
Got it.
And so the pitch is like, well, get on it now because it's going to take 3 months. Yeah. And that's kind of like the pitch right now.
Yeah. I heard someone told me a really interesting story recently that I think, to me, is like, it really embodies more of a tactic than anything, but also being genuine about what you're saying. And there was a story about, during the Great Depression, there were these two cereal companies that were kind of head to head, constantly fighting for, the leader in the cereal market, right? And one was Kellogg's, which we're all familiar with, and the other one was this company, Post Cereal, that today nobody's ever heard of.
People have heard of Post Cereal.
Post Cereal? You've heard of Post?
Yes.
I don't think they're a well-known cereal brand.
Dude, if you are over the age of 35, you have heard of Post Cereal.
I'm curious the comments on this one.
You always tell me that, though. You're always like, oh, nobody's heard of that saying, Jake.
Post is not.
Post Cereal. Drop it in the chat right now. If you've heard of Post Cereal,
all right,
go ahead. Drop it in the post. If you've heard of Post Cereal, go on with the story. But people know who Post Cereal is.
I guess the point is.
Of course. He's too young. Posted wheat, shreddies. Boom. Look, it's blowing up.
All right. The story that I was told was.
Yeah.
At the time, Kellogg's was trying to outseat them. They weren't kind of the well-known brand that they are today. And the approach that Kellogg's took at the time was to, instead of kind of hunker down and move away from their sales and marketing strategy at a time when people generally were kind of at a loss during the Depression, they decided they were going to double down. They saw it as an opportunity for them to get ahead. And, Post, I guess, took a different approach, which was they did hunker down, and ultimately, today, from what I understand, Kellogg's is a much bigger.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I think they might even bought them.
So my point here is, I think, you kind of, it's a positioning thing. It's an understanding, that, in times of chaos, there's opportunity, and for you, even though some people might be viewing investing as, this is a time to kind of hunker down and, take a step back and wait and see it, positioning wise to those investors might be, this is really an opportunity for you to get ahead. There's going to be less investors. It's going to be an opportunity for you to, take a bigger seat at the table or whatever it might be. But, I think that's probably more the approach I would take with it. You're not
just looking at all these people. No, your advice is spot on. That you can't.
I like that.
You can't hack it. I like people are calling out you because you went to University of Delaware too. Like that's even better. That people are calling out that you went to Delaware.
Well, we got some blue hens on here.
I don't know. Are they blue hens or are they being like, he's a blue hen? Come on, man. I can't tell if that's sarcastic because you went to Delaware or if it's not. All right. So Jack O'Connor had one. I'm gonna go ahead and take this he said, can just firing out LinkedIn requests to so many people dilute your intentions? I'm like, dude, the only person who knows that you're firing out LinkedIn requests is named Jack O'Connor. Like if you're trying to connect with, I want to connect with as many of my relevant buyers as possible every single day. So I think that's my, my hot take on it. Like, they don't know it's instant. They don't know how many people you're connecting with.
Yeah. I mean, now's the time to do it. We've all got extra time on our hands. We all know, we need to build a big audience on LinkedIn. Now's the time to get in front of people. People are just
accepting the requests. Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, we got one. Rahul, he dropped it over here too. He spends money, I think, organizing events for prospects, putting a face to the name. Online survey research is a crowded market. Now, time to set up meetings to ask for bids, quotes. It is still okay to reach out. My clients are market research. And then he had put some more. I spent a ton of money organizing events for prospects. Now the time to submit meetings for bids. So, yeah. So basically he's saying his clients are market research agencies and he's doing this online survey research for them. So how would a company like that thrive right now?
Yeah, I don't see a reason why much would change. I mean, I assume companies are still doing market research, why would that change? Why would that slow down? Why would...
Yeah, maybe they're putting it on hold. Maybe they're like, oh yeah, I'm not sure. We had this event. We were going to see how this plays out, et cetera. Maybe that's it. Maybe Rahul, you can feel free to drop some more insights in there. But I'm guessing what he's saying is he was trying to set up, now is the time to set up all these meetings. Is it still okay to reach out? I think the answer is yeah. I think what we're saying, go ahead and do it. Don't hesitate. It's all good. People are still spending money. Marketers still need to find out information and then just test. I would start to test different value props, based on what that company sells to. I'd be like, oh, the office furniture one. That's a good example, right? It's hey, office furniture company. You might look at that and you go, oh my God, they're never going to hire. They don't want research data. They don't want market research data, or market research. But again, how about instead, I'm going to flip it and say, hey, why don't I go survey every CEO and a senior level person to see if they're interested in, things that used to be office furniture at their home office, right? There's different ways that you can, but you got to be smart. You got to think about the buyer. And I don't think that's where a lot of this comes in.
And I think, just herd mentality, people, are going to pick up on whatever vibe you're putting down. So if you're hesitant or you feel like you're questioning in the conversation, is this still the right time? Or in your messaging, is it still the right time? People are going to pick up on that. Whereas, if you come into it with confidence yourself and, you're saying things like, well, look, we're having conversations with, a number of XYZ clients, or people in this role, at companies similar to yours, and typically what they're doing right now to see success. I think you got to realize too, people are going to pick up on, any second guessing, or lack of confidence you might have about the situation. So, I think genuinely, you got to find, the truth in like, how can you help, and just make sure that comes through in any messaging, whether it's, through LinkedIn, email, call, whatever it is.
And just sit there and think, okay, what would an office furniture company be thinking? Well, they may be doing this, they're doing that. What would an HR just think, open up your brains. You know what I mean? Like, that is the advice. If you guys open up your brains, there's not a single business, I don't think, not a single business that you could throw at me right now that I don't think that if you sit there and think about it long enough, there is a way that you can add value and not just be there probably are. I take that back. But all right, I want to get to, I'm going to guess it's Amelie. Amelie, you can let us know if we got that right. So she's at Snowflake. My good friend, Nicolette, runs that SDR team. So shout out to the folks over at Snowflake who've just been on a tear in terms of, driving new business. So Snowflake is a cloud data platform for engineers, data applications, analytics, et cetera. And she's wondering about the first messaging on LinkedIn. So a lot of her first messaging, basically the question is around, starting with that empathetic touch. And I want to just be I want to define this. And Matt, I want you to take this one.
Sure.
The empathetic touch is not crazy times right now. Hey, things are really wild right now. Hey, things are crazy right now. That's just acknowledging that you are alive. That's not empathy, right? That's the same thing as saying like, hey, hope you're doing okay. Like, how's the weather in Philadelphia? Like, that's just pleasantries.
Yeah.
So don't mistake an empathetic email by saying that because you acknowledge that things are crazy. That's not empathy. Empathy is knowing what an architecture person is going through right now. Some of this work from home stuff we talked about, stuff like that. So what do you think about this? So first LinkedIn message, and then like, how do you kind of then turn that conversation into something that's not salesy, to kind of move it along, right? Because we're trying to talk about moving deals along. So you get the connection request, you get that first touch point, and now we're trying to move it along. How do you think about not doing it without being salesy?
Look, I think the word salesy to me, obviously has a negative connotation, but like the truth, like I genuinely feel this way, that, sales at the heart of it is helping people solve something. Like, especially if you're in B2B, like you are helping somebody solve something. And Jake kind of got into some of what he means by empathy. And I feel the same way, like it's really just understanding like analytics, I lost it here, but analytics, data, right? Like all these things, they're products. They don't solve anything. And so, you can get one way of going wrong is sounding too generic, just trying to set up a meeting for no apparent reason. Another is to talk about yourself and the products that you sell. My recommendation would be, again, to think about like, okay, if you're selling to, engineers, what's the problem that they're going through right now, specific to your problem, to your product. And I would really, like think about like, how can you add value to this person? Like, hey, look, I realize you're probably dealing with XYZ. What I'd love to do is just set up some time and share some of the things we're seeing other engineers at companies like X do right now to solve it. I mean, at the heart of just like discovery, like that really is what you're doing. You're asking questions, like a discovery call, you're asking questions to understand, what's going on in this person's, world right now. Like, what are the challenges they're dealing with, at this company. And then you're giving advice, like you are the expert, you're giving them advice on how to solve that problem. Obviously, then there's a component where, these key capabilities just so happen to be, of this solution just so happen to be your product. Yeah. But, I really think you just have to think about that next message. If you change the call to action in your mind, because I think it's more mindset than anything, from this is going to be a discovery sales call to this is going to be an advisory call to help this person, and genuinely feel like, look, if at the end of this call I can't help this person, then we're going to, like, it's okay. But hopefully I've given them some advice and they might become a customer. We might move into a sales process. We might not. But if you really kind of change that call to action and like what you're trying to get them to on the next call, I think the messaging will just start to feel more genuine, and you'll kind of know exactly what the words on the paper need to be, ultimately to get a conversation set up.
Yeah, and I think so that kind of dovetails. Kevin Botsford has got a question, and Kevin, I don't know, Kevin, if you're on, can you drop in the chat? It could be interesting, man, if you wanted to. Well, yours is kind of straightforward. Like Bob Kaharia, if you're around and you want to jump on live, I want to kind of bring someone on so they can go a little bit deeper. If anyone has one of these questions here, Dave Schlock. Dave, what's up, man? I know you were in yesterday. How long do you think fashion and apparel business will be bounced back, especially ones depending more on store sales as compared to online? I think it's going to be a while. Look, ask me about sales or marketing. I'm not a finance expert. I told my financial advisor on Tuesday, I was like, I think I want to start day trading. He's like, dear God. And so that's not my jam, man. Go look at Morningstar or Barron's or something. Like, I don't know as much as I can about that. But for any of you, like that's what I would do is like, I think it's going to be interesting, especially if you just sell to retail. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's going to be an interesting place to go. So that's my 2 cents. With that said, again, I don't know the business. Is there a way you can help? So there you go. So I think that's a tough one. I don't have the answer for it, but I think, yes, more and more things will continue to move online, but fashion continues to, you like that? He dropped that post linked in there.
I'm looking at this pic.
I told you, dude, all of those are post cereals.
Look, someone told me this story. I should have checked.
No. Kellogg's is still much bigger. You're right about that.
I didn't know they had this much cereal.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that are like covering through some of this stuff. So let's go with Kevin Botsford's question. Been hearing a lot on stopping current sequences to change messaging, which makes sense. Do you think that a longer term nurturing sequence that follows content surrounding pain points with the current climate? Or should SDRs be going manual with outreach to show empathy for our prospects? I mean, both. I think, but again, it goes back to I'd have 2 different sequences running right now. Like at least 2. I mean, I'd have micro variations of all these. My first is kind of like nothing's changed. Like they're in a business. I'm going to just tweak some of the messaging, but they have their business is thriving, or they have a very specific need that we solve. That's my one bucket of sequences. And then Kevin, I'm running a whole other play of sequences that are those nurturing ones that are like, look, you might be thinking about this. If so, let's connect in 2 weeks. And then in 2 weeks, I drop them a couple articles. And then I follow up with like a LinkedIn touch point. So a lot of the touch points that we're building for our clients right now, the first 4 touch points involve LinkedIn. Research and connect day 1. Day 3, look to see if they posted, like or comment, or then you could say, or skip to step 4, which is like initial email. Then and it's step 7. So Kevin, I think the answer is you should sequence right now. One type of sequence that's dedicated to people where right now is a great time to reach out to them because they have a very specific need for what you do, or their industry is doing really, really well. And there are plenty of industries that I talked to a podcast company, small podcast company. I've got less than 50 people. They hit their annual number on Tuesday, right? I talked to an outsourced lead gen business. That business is crushing it right now. So there are people that are still doing quite well right now. So I think, Kevin, the answer is to differentiate between those 2 types of buyers, and I think that will be helpful for you. The folks at Hot Wax, they jumped in yesterday. 21-year-old company, Matt, I'll let you take this one. Serving retail companies. ICP is defined and we reach mid-level and enterprise fashion. What do you think is going to happen? Like, what could we do? We enable these technology in US and Europe for these high fashion brands, right? A lot of these brands are like experiencing some sales slumps. What do you think about something like this? How should they be positioning?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm assuming they have, when you say technology, that they have some kind of online presence, right? And I think, I would try to think about how to pivot in some instance. Like, I talked to an AI company yesterday who sells into retail, and he's like, yeah, we can't do anything with retail. And I'm like, why not? And he's like, because they're all over the place. And we started to unpack it a little bit more to really understand what's going on in the retail industry. And the reality is, like, they haven't gone away. It's just that their whole business is a mess depending on what they sell. Like, there's the whole forecast went to shit on, 3 weeks ago. And so, inventory has changed, like the logistics around, actual delivery has changed. And so this was an AI company. And so what we talked about was how to repackage their messaging to be less about helping them, increase revenue to retail clients, and instead to be more about, things like inventory management, where it's like, look, you need to reforecast using trends of the last 2 or 3 weeks. So you understand basically which products you need to be carrying and which you need to kind of downshift on, and how's that going to impact your ability to ship, and how's that going to impact your bottom line. So without understanding a ton about hot wax and specifically what technology, I think it's probably a similar process that I went through with that company, of really just kind of understanding what parts, because retail is being impacted in a lot of different ways, and it depends on what, kind of retail specifically, what parts does hot wax, can hot wax help to improve right now or help to better manage? Because I'd guess there's some element that you can support still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like, is there a component of that business that is still mission critical? Like that's what I would be thinking about. All right. So we got time to take maybe one more call here. All right, Bob, I'm going to see if Bob said that he was interested. He'd join us here with his question live. So Bob, you can, if you can hear me, you officially have the floor. If you want to drop in your question real quick, man.
Perfect. Thanks, Jake. Can everybody hear me okay?
We can hear you fine.
Excellent. So my question was, right now we're trying to kind of build relationships. You mentioned that there's 2 buckets that the prospects are currently falling in. Ours would be the second one right now, where there's not a huge demand for what we do in a way. And so building those relationships, I want to be able to provide my prospects with something of value. With that being said, I don't think anybody's ever really been won over with data sheets or white papers. So is it necessary to have something completely industry related, something from our particular company, or can it be just something of value that they can potentially use? Because again, I want to build that relationship. I don't want to reach out empty-handed. I want to give before I start receiving. What would your take be on this?
Can you tell us more about like the product? Like, how do you sell into it?
Absolutely. So we target security-minded folks. We sell web application security as a service. And so essentially it's not just a tool that we give to the client and say, hey, go run it. We manage all the vulnerabilities, and then we come back with something that's clean and actionable for their remediation team. We sell into, chief information security officers, as well as security architects, directors of information security. And so those are kind of the folks that we market to. Does that help, Jake?
Yeah, I mean, maybe like more like what's the use case? Like why are they buying it? What are you solving for them?
Oh, perfect. Sorry about that. So okay. They would buy it if they've come up with like an application, a web application or a mobile application that they need testing either on the source code side, okay, or on the dynamic side. If it's an in production website or a web application, that's where our solution would come into play.
All right, so it's primarily mobile app focused.
Mobile and web app, yes.
Okay, mobile and web app focused. Okay, well, what's applicable right now? You know what I mean? Like what are the industries where this is applicable right now? Are there industries that are experiencing like differences between how they use either of these?
Absolutely. The online retail industry, that's a huge vertical right now that obviously, people are not going into stores, as well as healthcare. However, some of those industries are heavily inundated right now with their own issues that they're kind of trying to put fires out on. One of the biggest objections that we've had so far is, hey, we don't have the bandwidth right now to deal with any changes. And so, instead of just going at them with a hard call to action, hey, can we set up a meeting or something like that? I still want to provide them with something.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can. I mean, I would just get more micro industry focused. I think like what I would do, Bob, is I would maybe break it down just a little bit further. Like that there's probably some of these industries where mobile usage is up or mobile usage is down dramatically. And so could you try to set up time with them, right? And say, hey, I bet you're starting to think about this. We should talk. Or like, hey, have you experienced anything around, increase in traffic or decrease? That would be my 2 cents. Like I would look for those people.
Okay,
there you go. Look, Bob, look, there you go. Christine says, can he work with the call centers? Our company is open if he can solve. There you go. I don't know if that's that, but connect with Christine there. You see her in the chat. Love that shit. She also, Matt, she validated your point for you. Post is 1.5 billion in revenue and Kellogg's 13.5.
Thank you, Christine.
Got you. So I think that's it, Bob.
I do see Christine on here. Yes.
Perfect. So connect with her on LinkedIn, reach out. Maybe we just made a deal happen. So I think that the key is, Bob, that I want you to really just sit down and instead of thinking of like what you do, which is mobile and web app, forget that. Think about the industries you serve. And instead just start to think, like, all right, are there any industries where this is going to be more applicable? Well, maybe these guys. Okay. What about, and then for the rest of them, like nurturing's fine. Like, hey, when you're starting, but again, you do need to think about it more specifically, I think is our advice. Matt, I don't know if you have any kind of parting thoughts here.
I mean, my mind immediately went to anything with e-commerce is probably off the rails right now, especially if they deliver anything that's considered essential goods, because that's mainly what's actually being shipped. Like they're probably experiencing traffic that they've never experienced potentially in their history. So, for what it's worth, I mean, similar advice to what Jake's saying, just kind of look at who's being impacted the most. And it's probably e-com companies shipping, whatever's considered essential goods.
Yeah, there's something there, man. I agree. So Bob, that's what I would do. Maybe your 2 bucket is big, but I promise you, if you sat down and you kind of look through your current customer roster, that's what I'd probably do. I'd go to my current customer roster, say, all right, what are these types of guys going through? Oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. And then you'd probably start to see a few trends, So I would just take an hour and give yourself some space to think.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate it.
All right. Awesome. And thank you everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it. We've got all the links in here. Please come and join, go check out the previous webinars. Next week, we're going to be doing some LinkedIn lives on Monday. We've got a huge session Thursday afternoon for everyone. I really can't thank all of you enough. So appreciate you joining. Appreciate all the questions. If I didn't get to your question, DM me on LinkedIn. It's Jake Dunlap on LinkedIn. It's really DM me your question and I'll do my best to get to it in the next week or so. Matt, thanks for hopping on. I appreciate it. Bob, thanks for hopping on live and hope everyone has an amazing weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.